With him we win. He's our champion. With him we can't lose. We always win. He's our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing Halal, Halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing Halal, Halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing Halal, Halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can't lose. We always win. You're our champion. win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing along, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hallelujah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands. We lift our voice. We celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hello Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hello Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hello Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hello, hello Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one. There is none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the out someone. There's none like you. With you we win. You're our champion. With you we can lose. We always win. You're our champion. Oh, worthy, worthy. Yahuwah is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. Yahuwah is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I say he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. I say worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I say worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. Worthy, worthy, you is worthy of my praise. I say worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I say worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. Worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my praise. I said he's worthy of my praise, worthy of my praise. You is worthy of my
Allah, Yahuwah, we do give him praise and esteem for yet another opportunity to be in your presence. We told our Yahweh, you may be seated in his presence, for allowing us to come back and to finish the conclusion of the matter. Let us take up in chapter 14, verse 16, and we're going to begin. Yes, I'll begin at verse 16. Wait a minute. We stopped at verse We stopped at verse 25. We'll come in with verse 24. Let's read 7 verses, please, beginning at verse 24.
And it came to pass in the morning watch that Yahuwah looked down upon the army of the Mitzrayim through the pillar of fire and cloud, and he troubled the army of the Mitzrayim. And he took off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Mitzrayim said, let us flee from the place of Yashral, for Yahuwah fights for them against the Mitzrayim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the Mayim may come back upon the Mitzrayim, on their chariots and on their horsemen. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth, and the Mitzrayim fled into it, and Yahuwah overthrew the Mitzrayim in the midst of the sea. And the Mayim returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. Not so much as one of them remained. But the children of Yasharal had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the Mayim were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. So Yahuwah saved Yasharal that day out of the hand of the Mitzrayim, and Yasharal saw the Mitzrayim dead on the seashore. And it is so.
Go ahead and read verse 31. Go ahead and start it off.
Okay. Thus Yasharal saw the great work which Yahuwah had done in Mitzrayim, and the people feared Yahuwah and believed Yahuwah and his servant Moshe. And it is so.
And it is so. As we are yet in the scroll of Shema, and our theme is Beshalach, when he let go, when Pharaoh let the children of Yasharal go, that they may go and worship the Abba and sacrifice unto him. Now we see that it is finalized, that the last plague has been destroyed, and that plague was who? Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the last plague that they would ever have to deal with. Excuse me. As we come to understand, and we read verse 24, he discomforted them. What does it mean when he discomforted them? Along even in that verse, chapter 24. He threw into confusion by depriving them of their senses, by bringing upon them many kinds of ailments. So while they got in there, you can imagine that they basically, people that get on the boat and they get seasick. You can imagine being delirious and delusional. Why? Because this was the hand of the Abba against them. So while everybody else is going and not hyperventilating and, fearing, because you have to understand that water dividing and the being that high, that's enough to cause you, especially if you are one that's kind of skittish when it comes to going in the small confined places. Not saying that it was confined and small, but think about it. You're crossing of the Reed Sea. You're going on dry land when you saw the just hours before it was full of water. That the place that you were standing on at that moment is now dry, not slippery, slimy, and all those type of things, but dry. And not only that, but you have a wall of water that you're looking up at that is so high. It's not like, you go in and you can stand up in this water. It's not ankle deep. This is so high. Are you following me? So you can imagine the emotions that were troubling them, not just them, but even the children of Yasharal as they crossed over. But now here it is, Pharaoh and his army is caught up in this. Confused, thinking, okay, how can this be? Now you have to understand, you in it now, ain't no turning back. You looking at them ahead, but then you looking back. You too far in to turn around, and you got obstacles before you that's preventing you from going forward. So you're what? You're stuck. Right. They were stuck. And so he began to do this, and then he took off. The subject is Yahuwah. The wheels of the chariots set alight by the pillar of fire were destroyed. So the chariots were dragged along, and their occupants were bruised and shaken. To hasten their flight, the Mitzrayim unharnessed the chariots, but the general confusion also affected the horses, and the men were compelled to drag the chariots along. So they just acting all crazy. You let the horses go, and the horses running, don't know where to go and what to do. And here you are dragging a chariot. You can imagine the mayhem, and and you looking forward getting across. You don't want to look back. You thinking forward, whatever, backwards, never. Ain't no sinking and swimming up in here, but we got to get out of here. We got to get on through. And so, but I'm sure those that had already made it across are looking and really at that point, I'm inclined to believe they didn't look just yet because they still trying to get across. Because mind you, that would have been a major blockage. You trying to look across, and you still got people coming on. 600,000 men plus women and children, and plus your cattle. So you don't have time to stop. People that keep it moving, bro. Keep it moving. What is it? You have to keep when you're driving at least one car in between you and another car to make sure you have the right distance in between you and the next person. So you can imagine they're saying, look, keep at least 2 people distance so you don't walk all up on each other's heels. You all up on the back of everybody's ankles and so forth. So you can imagine them getting across in haste, but not running and running people over and knocking people over because you're scared. But getting across. So this is the state that they were in. Heavily. Yahuwah dealt out to the Mitzrayim a treatment that was hard on the principle of measure for their cruel treatment of the Yasharites in Mitzrayim. This is why you have to remember when the writings tell us vengeance belongs to Abba Yahuwah, and he shall do what? He shall repay. There is nothing we could ever do to anybody that will outmerit and outweigh what Abba Yahuwah is going to do to them for what they have done to us as a people. And it is so. Against the Mitzrayim. Literally in Mitzrayim, the population of Mitzrayim suffered punishment simultaneously with those who were at the Red Sea on account of the people of Mitzrayim. So that means while things was going on there, people were panicking there. What's going to happen to them? They didn't follow these people. We already saw what happened. You can imagine once again the mayhem that just began to take hold, just began to spread like a wildfire. And just began to be contagious. So we can see these things. Verse 26, stretch out thy hand. Moshe was to do this after the Yasharites reached the opposite shore. So once they got across and the Mitzrayim were in the middle and they doing all they doing, confused and delirious and delusional, and you can look at that as, think about it. When you take away a person's oxygen, what happens? They panic because you get delusional. I'm about to suffocate in here. You watch movies and you see where people are like, calm down. I can't breathe. I'm hyperventilating. And you say, stop, slow down, and breathe. So you can imagine being in that condition that it probably also took away their breath to where they did not have enough of oxygen to breathe. And so now it is causing them to act crazy, delusional, and confused. So you have to understand that Abba Yahuwah can use the natural things to get you. He can use natural situations to whip people for doing the things they do. Now, may come back. The waters that formed a wall on either side of them will return and overwhelm the Mitzrayim. Verse 27, its strength, that is its former strength, fled against it, literally towards it. So bewildered had the Mitzrayim become that they did not know what they were doing. They thought they were fleeing from the sea when in fact they were making towards it. As they reversed their chariots to take flight, the sea descended upon them. So they're thinking we're going, backwards, yet they're going further in, and they're believing we're getting out of this. Once again, you got to imagine that's a lot of water. And if you've ever been hit with a water balloon or you've ever been hit with the water hose and the force of that water or any kind of water that's being let loose like floods and all those typhoons and all that type of stuff, when that type of water is released, the pressure that it brings crushes bones, smashes people to death. So you have to imagine that wall coming together at the same time, like the hands of Abba Yahuwah just smashing them together. Wham! And crushing them. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And let me tell y'all something. They felt every bit of it. Mm-hmm. They felt it all. It wasn't like, he took the sting out. No, he did not. He wanted to make sure they understood and felt the sting. That which was taking place and that which was happening in their lives. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Overthrew. Literally shook out or emptied out. They were thrown out from their chariots headlong into the sea. And Yahuwah endowed them with extraordinary vitality, a play upon words, na'aruf, youth, vitality, and wayiner overthrew to prolong their agony. So he made sure, as I said, they felt that. And one of the things you hear people talk, people drowning, how excruciating the pain is. Say because your lungs fill up and you drown. You know, you get a little bit of you swallow spit and you be feeling like your head about to pop out because you're trying to get that water out of your what? Out of your air, out of your air tubes or your pipes, and you coughing and and you doing everything. But imagine every time you cough, the more they coughed, the more they took in. And watch this. He made sure they had the strength of youth. So the harder they fought, the harder it was on them. So that's you understand it. I don't feel sorry for them, not one bit, because they got what was coming to them. They got what was coming to them. And you have to understand the reason why many times people have an issue with that and understanding that is because to them, I don't see the problem because why would he want such from them? Why would he want them to kill animals? You asking questions because you're on the outside looking in. You're not his people. He didn't call you. He didn't set you apart to worship him. So for those that are foreigners and don't understand, to them, this is a cruel thing. It's not cruel. It's just reward. And it is so.
It is so.
So their agony was prolonged. It wasn't cut short, but it continued. Even all the hosts of Pharaoh, literally to all the hosts, which it is an idiomatic form of, and all of the hosts, but it is to be understood the phrase as the chariots and horsemen which belong to the host. So we know it was something about them. All those that followed him and his foolishness died, and their families ended up suffering behind their foolishness. I said it when we were at home during the feast of unleavened bread on Shabbat. I said, and I will continue to say it. It is a foolish person that will continue to follow a foolish leader.
Right.
It is a foolish person that will follow someone when you know that they are trying to box against the Abba and they cannot. You see all this craziness happening, and yet you continue to fight with them. We just gonna rise up and we're gonna do. Okay, keep rising and you keep on sinking. Because you have to understand, for every time you rise, you have to wonder why and how are you rising when every time you rise, you take a harder fall. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. And I know a lot of people don't believe we don't need no leadership. We just got to do what we got to do because that ain't of the opposite. We don't need that. Believe that if you want to. You can believe that if you want to. But I'm sure when it was all said and done with them, they realized, you know what? We did a stupid thing. We did a foolish thing to follow him.
Right.
Because he has destroyed our lives, and there is no remedy for this. And it is so. Walked upon dry ground. Although this was stated in verse 22, it is repeated in verse 29 to intimate that even before the last Yasharalite had left the sea, the waters began to return. And while the Mitzrayim were drowning in one part of the sea, in another part the Yasharalites were walking on dry land. Two different winds blew simultaneously. With the blast of thy nostrils, the waters were piled. 15 and 8 alludes to the wind which kept the waters from the Yasharalites. Thou didst blow with thy wind. The sea covered them. 15 and 10 refers to the waters which returned upon the Mitzrayim to enable the Yasharalites to complete the crossing by morning. Now, once again, let's listen at this. The rabbis declared that the sea divided itself into 12 divisions in accordance with the number of the tribes, as I said earlier. So this was their way of saying, hey, this is how they were able to get over and it not be a single file and trying to get that many people across, which it could be done, but it is alluded to that there were 12 passageways. So as they walked across, this is how they were able to make it in the manner they did. And it is so. Save Yasharal. The Yasharalites still dreaded Pharaoh until they saw the Mitzrayim corpses. Until then, the Yasharalites felt as slaves who fled from their masters. But now that they saw the Mitzrayim dead, they felt that they were free men. And we say, when you understand free men, that is also talking about women as well. Symbolic of all of them being free. Because remember, the women, children, animals, everybody went free and everybody went across. Nobody was left over there. Dead upon the seashore. The sea threw up the bodies, and the Yasharalites felt assured that the Mitzrayim were dead and had not disappeared, only to emerge and attack them at another part of the shore. Now you have to understand, only the Abba could do something like that because the undercurrent did not swipe them up or did not grab them and take them somewhere else. But Abba Yahuwah made sure that the sea itself, the reed sea or the sea of reeds, vomited them up on the seashore opposite of them to where they could see their bodies and know that they were lifeless and not pop up somewhere else.
Right.
Now you have to understand that's a monumental moment at that time. That is a defining moment for the children of Yahshua.
Right.
Because it was at that moment that he wanted to assure them, look, you knew when you began to walk across, you were free.
Right.
But this is just a bonus to add to your belief so that you won't stray and that you will see that I am a promise keeper.
Right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
You have to understand, Abba Yahuwah doesn't have to do anything extra, but he does it for what? To build our belief.
Huh.
So that we will walk in assurance of who he is and what he says.
Right.
So you have to understand that this is not Christianity. And I know many times you hear people defend it, and it just really just irks me. But I don't get into things because it's useless to debate. But you know, when we were in Christianity, many of us, we didn't fast and we didn't pray, we didn't cry, we didn't fast and we didn't pray, we didn't cry, we didn't gave everything we had, we took stuff out of our homes, and to no avail, we saw nothing happen.
Right.
But then when we come in the truth, we start seeing things happen for us.
Right.
And you start believing and you say, you know what, thank you, Abba Yahuwah, because I know now with surety you are who you say you are. And I'm not just throwing up some random prayer, hoping and praying that something or someone catches it and gives me an answer. But I know exactly who I am praying to. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand and hold on to. So he was guaranteeing them at that moment that they were going to be taken care of, and that things for them were going to continue to move. Are you following me?
Yes.
Verse 31, the great work, literally the great hand, that great power which the hand of Yahuwah exercised, the severe punishment, Yahuwah's retributive justice which he had displayed upon the Mitzrayim. Feared Yahuwah. Their experience intensified their fear of Yahuwah and confirmed them in their belief. Believed in Yahuwah, that he is true, and that Moshe, his servant, was committed to carrying out the mission entrusted to him. They now believe that they would not die from famine in the wilderness. And this is what we have to believe. We have to believe you didn't wake me up for me to go, for me to die.
Right.
You didn't wake me up for me to suffer and go through mentally. You woke me up to bring me into this truth to be what? A light that shines in obscurity, shines in darkness. See, this is why, once again, you have to renew your mind.
Right.
But how can we renew our minds? Somebody say, but if I never had this truth, what am I renewing it to? You're renewing it so that it will be able to understand and grasp that what the Abba is giving. Mm-hmm. You're renewing it to truth. Are you following me? Even though we did not walk in truth, we are still giving access for renewal.
Right.
So that we can have the platform, so that we can have a fertile ground, our lives. Mm-hmm. I said it as he gave it to me some years ago. You and I am the natural habitation for the Torah. Mm-hmm. This is why when you receive the instructions of the Abba, the reason there becomes conflict is because we're trying to fight against his instructions. Right. But the moment we accept his instructions into here, its natural place of abode, and we stop fighting, then we begin to see results beyond our imagination.
Right. Right.
Yes, we do. Why? Because you've given it access to your life. You've given life access to your life. That life that brings transformation. That life that allows us to accept and receive his instructions for our lives. Now you have to understand, it takes that. Because remember, when I live contrary to his instructions, these are the things that we feared. You can't go back into the law because the law is built upon death. And those principles were just about death. That's not death, that's life. And it's the ignorant person that does not understand the instructions of the Abba that says, oh, you walking in the death, because no longer are we to walk in that according to, what is it, Ibram chapter 10, according to that what Rabbi Shaul said. And then you have to understand, there are many questions many things that are questioned about Ibram chapter, the writings of the Hebrew book or the Ibram book. Because many want to say that it was Rabbi Shaul, but many say because it does not match his style. Are y'all following?
Yes.
But either way, that what is stated has got to be understood. Nowhere does Rabbi Shaul or in the writings or the scroll of Ibram does it ever denounce or ever force us or teach us to dismiss or do away with the instructions of the Abba. It is from the mindset that we approach it. It is from the heart set that we approach it when it comes down to his instructions. Are you following me? Yes. We're not to fight his instructions, we're to embrace it. Because we are the natural habitation. When Torah gets into you, are you hearing me? Yes. This is why we can be pregnated and we bring forth, whether you are male or female. Because this has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with the belief that is stirred in your ruach to believe him. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because you must understand, even men in this are able to have spiritual wounds. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
To bring forth creative ideas, innovative ideas, to bring our people into truth. And when you begin to do that, when you take care of his business, he'll take care of yours. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Why is it important for us to understand that? Because you have to understand the moment you allow his instructions to be the pinnacle, to be the center of your life, is the moment that things truly begin to change. Someone will say, well, how is it that, everybody can get in and certain things begin to change? Well, you have to understand, once again, where is the change stemming from? Abba Yahuwah moves upon belief and obedience. And we are supposed to be the example to everybody else. You never let anybody else come in and outdo you concerning what belongs to you.
Right.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
You never let anybody come and out ahab the person you're with. You're supposed to ahab them more than anybody else can.
No.
You're supposed to praise them more than anybody else can. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because that is the person you have connected with. You've made this person to be the lifelong partner in your life. And so because Yahuwah chose us, and he desires and continues to desire us to be the example to other nations, it behooves us never to let another nation come in and outpraise him, out magnify him, out witness. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
His power and his magnitude. That's our job. That's our job. And once again, when you allow the Torah to be in the seat of your ruach and to be the driving force, and I don't mean driving to the point of driving you down on the ground, but that which gives you the momentum, that what motivates you to be and to do, we can't fail. Because it's his instructions that motivates us. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
His instructions that motivates us to do and to become and to behold all that he has for us. This is very important for us as his children, as his set apart people. And it is so.
It is.
All right. Chapter 15. Let us read 8 verses in chapter 15.
Then Moshe and the children of Yashar sang this song to Yahuwah and spoke, saying, I sing to Yahuwah, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength and song. He has become my deliverance. He is my El, and I praise him. My power of my fathers, and I exalt him. Yahuwah is a man of battle. Yahuwah is his name. He has cast Pharaoh's chariots and his army into the sea, and his chosen officers are drowned in the sea of reeds. The depths covered them, and they went down to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has become great in power. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has crushed the enemy. And in the greatness of your excellence, you pulled down those who rose up against you. You set forth your wrath, it consumed them like stubble. And with the wind of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up, and the flood stood like a wall. The depths became stiff in the heart of the sea.
And it is so. Awesome. Now that was a song, y'all. That was a song. They sung that. Are y'all following me? That was their song. They sung that. You have to understand. Anytime the Abba would do great things for them, they would hit a tune and just start. They would sing. And this is why it's important that we understand praise. Praise is what we do, not just because we're going through, but because it's calmly for the upright. They got across and they began to sing. And they sang this song to Yahuwah and spoke, saying, I will sing to Yahuwah, for he has triumphed. The horses and its riders he has thrown into the sea. Now you would think, how can everybody know that song? Because they just started. You had the person that led the song, and then those that followed along. You follow me? Because they had a mind to do. They saw the great things of Abba Yahuwah. So when you see these things, it's not hard. You hear what I'm saying? Especially when you're focused and when you're paying attention. You know, you'd be thinking, okay, what did you say? What was that last word? What was that? When you're focused on him and you're focused, you can do this. And this is what they did. They began to sing. They began to sing a song of victory. They began to sing a song of deliverance. They began to sing from their heart. And they began to show the Abba what it meant to them. That tells me that they were a people that would sing. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
This was a part of what they did. This is a part of what they do. Sing. This is a part of what we do. We just gotta, get it back. But they had some singers. Are you following me? Yes. That song unto the verse 8. I'm thinking it wasn't rhyming. It didn't have to rhyme. It was to praise him, not to give them esteem, but to praise the Abba for what he had done for them. Verse 8, and with the blast of your nostrils, the waters were gathered together. The streams of water stood upright like a heap, and the depths froze in the heart of the sea. And they probably patting and, that sound was going, boy. That thing probably was so great. And Yapa, the men, the women, the children, everybody singing in unison. And probably could be heard like the fragrant smell of a nice flower. Just began to carry on. Are you following me? Yes. That's just phenomenal to me to see that. Are you hearing me? Yes. It's very important for us to see. All right, they sang. Moshe literally, then Moshe will sing. The future tense signifies that on beholding the miracle, Moshe determined that he would sing. It is a grammatical idiom to follow then by a verb in the future tense, but with the significance of the past. The verb is in the singular. Moshe composed the song and taught it to the people. After that, each Yisraelite sang it individually, and it was sung by later generations. So you have to understand, they were getting it in. Right. They were getting it in, singing. He taught it to them, and they didn't sit there and say, well, that song is too hard. Then they began to sing it. Are y'all following me? Say, yes. This is the song we want to teach. That's why I like to get our stuff together and we sing it. Are y'all following me? Yes. It's important that we understand these things. And it is so. Yes. Okay, now, highly exalted. Literally being exalted. He is exalted. Following the Targum renders, he is exalted above all exalted beings. An exaltation that is supreme power. He is, according to another explanation, the verb indicates a superhuman act. A warrior hurls his opponent from his horse, but Yahuwah overthrew both horse and rider. Hence the repetition of the verb to indicate the double feat. By his triumph over the Mitzrayim host, Yahuwah demonstrated his infinite might. So you have to understand that he never got wet and he never got dirty. He was able to do it without laying a hand on anybody. Are y'all following me?
No.
Because he is powerful. He is the supreme being. He is our Abba. And we know him by name.
Yes.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand that. This is why we should never ever take anything for granted, and we should never ever, ever, ever give up what he's given unto us for anything. Never. Because we know his name. We have personal relationship with him. And this is so important for us to continue to build upon. And it is so. All right, let's read starting with verse 9. Let's read 7 more verses. Let's say eight verses. I'm sorry, let's read 8 verses.
Verse 9. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire will be gratified at their expense. I will draw my sword, my hand will destroy them. Would you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them? They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Yahuwah, who is like you among power? Who is like you, esteemed in holiness, revered with praises, or Kadesh, performing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. You will lead the people you have redeemed with your diligent ahad. You will guide them to your Kadesh dwelling with your strength. When the peoples hear, they will shudder. Anguish will seize the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom will be terrified. Trembling will seize the leaders of Moab. The inhabitants of Canaan will panic, and terror and dread will fall on them. They will be still as a stone because of your powerful arm, until your people pass by Yahuwah, until the people whom you purchased pass by. And it is so.
And so you read to verse 16? All right. Now, let's look at verse 9. The enemy said, that is, Pharaoh said to his people in Mitzrayim, when he urged them to pursue Yasharal. When he saw the sea divided, this verse explains how the destruction of the Mitzrayim host described in the preceding verse came about. My lust, literally my soul, in the sense of desire, destroyed them, renders, impoverished them, which he did. And you have to understand, whenever you kill or take out the leader, you destroy the whole host of the whole kingdom. That is why a kingdom without a king or without a set person, a queen, is open for destruction, open for attack. And so it's important that we understand that the Abba knew once he got that last plague, which was Pharaoh, he knew that Mitzrayim would never recover and that nobody would ever be able to come back and exact vengeance on the children of Yasharal. Why? Because who's left?
Sure.
Who's left? Who's going to do that? Nobody else is going to rise up. Everybody, because remember, he took all the what? The mighty men. He took his arm, his infantry.
Huh.
So who's going to rise up? Who's going to come back and say, okay, we're going to do this? Nobody's going to do that because he already had all the men with him that would do that. So he knew that he was going to impoverish them and he was going to destroy them. And what literally really happened, think about it. Either they stayed there and others came in and conquered them, or they moved on and just abandoned that place. Because who was going to be there to defend them? Nobody. Thou didst blow, nashpatah, connecting the verb with neshif, evening, suggests that there is an allusion to the east wind which divided the sea in the night, or the Layla. This is 15 and 21. The same wind which made a path for the redeeming Yasharalite caused the waters to cover the pursuers. That's 14 and 21, sorry. The strong wind prevented those who could swim from reaching the shore. So while those that might have been expert swimmers, you weren't getting out of this. You know, they're going to swim against the current. No, that wind going to get you. Are you following me?
Yes.
You ain't coming up out of that. And watch this. He didn't let any animal come, no shark or no other animal eat them. He allowed their bodies to come to the shore to show that he had done this.
Right.
He wanted to prove to them that these things had been done. The mighty, that is the Malach, fearful in praises. Men are fearful in praising Yahuwah lest they fail to do this in adequate terms. Yahuwah is praised as a result of the awe-inspiring punishment he brings upon his enemies. doing wonders. Yahuwah works wonders which are acknowledged to be above natural phenomena. Thou stretchest out. Thou didst incline. He holds all in his hand, so that when he inclines it, the wicked fall. Thy right hand, a symbol of his power. It is an allusion to 14 and 26. The earth swallowed them. The sea cast up the bodies of the Mitzrayim onto the shore, where they decomposed into dust. As a reward for their acknowledgement, Yahuwah is righteous. 9 and 27. The earth gave their bodies burial. So nothing came and got us. You can imagine every time while they were in that place, they looked over there and saw those bodies were decomposing and dying. I mean, is anybody gone? No, everybody's gonna stay there and they're gonna die. You know how when you see some carcasses on the side of the road and the vultures don't get to them and nothing else go and eat it up. And so I'm thinking, boy, that thing stink. But by the time you go back, ain't nothing left, and then you see nothing but bones, and then by the time you see the bones and the skin, you look again, ain't nothing there. Are you following me?
Yes.
As a testimony of the power of the Yahweh. And watch this, his aha for the children of Yahshua. Because the very thing they feared is the very thing or the very person that Abba Yahuwah made sure they saw him dead. And it is so.
It is so.
Excuse me. Thy aha, demonstrated in providing the pillars of cloud and fire, has led the people. The past tense is used in a prophetic sense, pointing to the future deliverance of Yahshua in their journey so far by means of the two pillars. Guided them. The verb signifies led them gently as a shepherd leads his flock. Bereshit 33 and 14. A Kadesh habitation. The sanctuary in Jerusalem, Mount Sinai, the land of Canaan. The people have heard. When the peoples around Yahshua hear of Yahuwah's visitation upon the Mitzrayim, they will take fright at his avenging hand. The cause of their fear was that the Yashrualites would come home again against them. I'll read that again. The people have heard. When the peoples around Yahshua hear of Yahuwah's visitation upon the Mitzrayim, they will take fright at his avenging hand. The cause of their fear was that the Yashrualites would come against them. The inhabitants of Philistia. These are the singled out as they had reason to dread the vengeance of Yahshua. According to a rabbinic tradition, which has a bias or base, in it. In Chronicles Aleph 7 and 21, the children of Ephraim made an error in their calculation of the date of the promised deliverance and left Mitzrayim before the appointed time and were attacked by the Plishtim. Now that's according to rabbinic tradition. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Rabbinic tradition. We don't follow rabbinic tradition. Chiefs of Edom, mighty men of Moab. These had no reason to fear attacks from Yasharal, the Midbar 20 and 14, but they felt distressed and annoyed at the majesty, which was now Yasharal's. Trembling take hold of them, lest Yahshua would rise up against them. So it's important that we see everything that has been taking place. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Let us continue to read verse 17.
17 and 8 verses.
Yes.
Verse 17, and it reads, You bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, in the place, O Yahuwah, which you have made for your dwelling, the set apart place, O Yahuwah, which your hands have prepared. Yahuwah reigns forever and ever. For the horses of Pharaoh went with his chariots and his horsemen into the sea, and Yahuwah brought back the waters of the sea upon them. And the children of Yahshua went on dry ground in the midst of the sea. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aharon, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them, Sing to Yahuwah, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Verse 22. And Moshe brought forth Yasharal from the seat of reeds, And they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no Maim. And they came to Marah, and they were unable to drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. So the name of it was called Marah. And the people grumbled against Moshe, saying, what are we to drink? And it is so.
You verse 24.
Yes.
It is so. All right, let's look at verse 17. Thou bringest them in. Moshe substituted them for us because he foresaw that he was not destined to enter the promised land. Plantest them. Moshe prayed that Yasharal should become firmly rooted in their new land as a plant takes root in the ground and be not exiled therefrom. Now, once again, you have to understand when you start praying in this manner, you understand, you see things and thinking, okay, we don't want to be uprooted out of this. So we're going to pray that Abba Yahuwah plant us here so that we can maintain our position here. Why? Because we realize if we're not planted in this place, look at what can take place. And we need him to help us. And so Moshe was praying according to wisdom. Plant us in this. Allow that your instruction to be planted into us. 18. Yahuwah shall reign in the future when the kingship will be acknowledged by all. Yahuwah's sovereignty on earth will become more evident with the settlement of Yasharal in the Kadesh land. Well, the sanctuary in his esteem will be erected. It is construed as a prayer. May Yahuwah reign when no other deity will be worshipped. Yahuwah having proved his saving power, may he in future protest the righteous and punish the wicked. Protect the righteous and punish the wicked. And it is so.
It is so.
Now, going back, alluding to the song for the horses. It is rendered when the horses, so too, who is the opinion that this verse is not part of the song of Moshe, but is to be connected with the next verse and is introductory to the song of Miriam. This verse is part of Moshe's song, recounting Yahuwah's wondrous act. It is explained that these verses dates the song that is Moshe and Yasharal sang when the horses of Pharaoh. So once again, they're trying to basically say that when Miriam sung and when Moshe sung, their songs are different. But when you look at it, she picks up the timbrel and says, "Come on, let's begin to." In other words, it is a almost what you look at as a call and response song. He sings this, then she comes back and says, "Okay, now we're gonna put some music to it. Get the tambourines, let's make a noise. Let's do this." Are you following me?
Yes.
You got a lot of people don't believe in music, don't believe in timbrels, don't believe in drums, don't believe in any of that stuff. But we do. We see that she picked it up.
Sure.
And it is so.
It is so.
Verse 20, Miriam, Miriam the prophetess. This is the first time that she is referred to as a prophetess. Now, once again, let's listen to the rabbinic tradition. She foretold to her Ima the birth of Moshe. Hence, she is described as the sister of Haran. That is, she was already a prophetess when she was the sister only of Haran. So she was a prophetess. She was not just a prophetess when they came and took them out of Mitzrayim, but she was a prophetess then. People sometimes really don't give credit where credit is due. You can't be labeled something if you're not that. And I believe the reason we don't hear a lot of stuff about the women, and especially about Miriam, is because it was meant to be kept. People did this on purpose to keep the woman out, to make it like, she's just this by title. She had to be bringing something forth, and it wasn't of her own accord, but this is what the Abba had called her to do. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Sister of Haran. Miriam, in accordance with the customary practice, is described as a sister of her firstborn brother. Also because he risked incurring Yahuwah's displeasure in entreating Moshe on her behalf when she was smitten with leprosy. Bamidbar 12 and 11. As the name of Haran does not figure in the song of Moshe, scripture makes the omission by bringing into the song of Miriam. So once again, there's a lot of things that's saying, okay, we're bringing in this song of Miriam because when Moshe sung, he didn't bring in Haran. Once again, you have to look at some things that are important and some things that are more important. Now, why would that be important? Because once again, they were singing about the different things that took place and those that were involved. Once again, I do believe that they cut a lot of things out or removed a lot of things. Are you hearing me? Yes. Because there are some things they just wanted to keep us in the dark behind and keep us ignorant behind. But Abba Yahuwah will always bring forth and bring it out. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, a timbrel. So confident were the pious women of Yasharal in that generation of the miracles that Yahuwah was about to work for Yasharal, that they brought timbrels with them out of Mitzrayim with which to celebrate the triumphs. Now you have to understand, while the men brought out, and it's not saying that that they were in competition, but while the men were armed and ready for war, the women were armed and ready for what? Praise. That's why people always ask, why is it that women praise more or praise harder than men? It's in us to do so. That's not saying men don't praise. Please don't get me wrong, because you do have some brothers that do believe in praising Him. And I don't believe that because we're walking in truth that we can't still yet praise Him in the dance. We just know who and why and what we're dancing for. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And that when we do use the timbrels and use the drums, we know why we're doing it, because it is to praise the Abba. We're singing unto Him because of the victories that we are anticipating and expecting, and the ones that we've already experienced. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. All right. Miriam saying, Miriam led the women in song as Moshe led the men. So I would be inclined to believe they led everybody into singing, because what about the children? So everybody, are you following me? Once again, you don't really start seeing the separation. And it says, let's look back at verse 1 real quick. And what does it say in verse 1? Then Moshe and the children of Yasharal sang this song to who? Yahuwah. I will sing to Yahuwah, for He has triumphed. The horse and its rider He has thrown into the sea. It didn't say he taught the men and then she taught the women. It said He taught the who? The children of Yasharal. We have to be able to catch those different things. Why? Because then we'll be thinking, well, the men need to praise over here and the women need to praise over here. When He brought them across, He brought them all across at what? The same time. It wasn't the men went first and the women went first and the children went first. They went across according to how He had purpose for them to go across. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
This is why we have to cease with these gender wars. Well, the women need to praise over here, and the women need to learn over here, and the men, you learn from whoever has the Torah or the word of power in their mouth. Because if you're gender driven, you get behind or get under a brother that don't know what they're talking about, or a sister that don't know what they're talking about, you're in trouble. So it's important that we understand that if you're going to learn from those that are full of the Ruach, and not base it upon gender. Because just because a person is a man doesn't mean that they automatically are a teacher, a more. That's not the truth. Now, you ought to be the leader of your home. And if you're not the leader of your home, that's something you and your Isha or your Asha need to discuss. If you can't go in breaking in and busting and kicking somebody else's door down trying to tell them how to run their house, and your house is not together. Major problem right there. Are y'all following?
Yes.
All right. Once again, we see the Yapa in this, and we see just how great things are and how they sang unto Abba Yahuwah. All right, verse 22. Moshe led Yasharal onward. Literally, Moshe caused Yasharal to journey. He compelled them to journey against their will as they were loath to leave behind the rich booty of their enemies. With the destruction of the Mitzrayim, the imminent danger facing Yasharal was gone, and they did not feel inclined to journey by night or by Layla. Moshe, therefore, by the command of Yahuwah, made them continue their march by Layla. That's one thing too that we ought to always pray, never to become what? Complacent. complacent. Well, we got this victory. We can slow down now. We got it. We ain't got, we ain't in no push no more. We ain't in no hurry for this. So, really, we can take our time. Really, we cannot take our time. We need to keep the momentum. Are you following me?
Yes.
We don't want to slow our momentum down. He gave us the momentum, and we need to go on. And then think about it. When the Mitzrayim came, you can imagine what the chariots looked like. You can imagine what they had on. They were decked. They never went anywhere. They never went anywhere without stuff. And then all the stuff that they had already taken, hey, we could build here, we could do here. No, that's not what Abu Yahuwah said. Don't start coming up with your own theories and coming up with your own plans and ideas. We're going to stick with what? The plan that he gave to us. And that is to push on and go to the place to do what? To sacrifice unto him. You have to understand, he was not just telling Pharaoh that just to tell him that. It was in him, it was planned for them to go and do what? Sacrifice to the Abba. Because this was his way of starting the relationship with them and building from this platform and from this point. So you don't change it just because you got some victories. We never ever do that. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Very important. All right, let's finish reading. Mm-hmm.
Verse 25 reads, Then Moshe cried out to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There Yahuwah made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. And he said, If you listen carefully to the voice of Yahuwah your power, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commandments and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Mitzrayim, for I am Yahuwah, who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. Chapter 16.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Yasharite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sanya, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Mitzrayim. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moshe and Aharon. The Yasharites said to them, If only we had died by Yahuwah's hand in Mitzrayim. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, I'll rain down bread from Shemaim for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for the day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gathered on the other days. And it is so.
And it is so. All right. Very important, because now we begin to see a change take place. We began to see the fleshing out and the order and the instructions of the Abba. Once again, Moshe has to push them forward. Now, as he's pushing them forward, there is a foul voice. And now here it is. Instead of them praising, they're complaining. You brought us out here to die. We should have stayed there by, to eat the pots of meat. We could have made it there, hey, this is just foolish. Now you start thinking, wow, just that quick. Do you not know one thing about whatever is in the heart of man, and I'm talking about mankind, it's going to come out. When you get pressed hard enough for a situation that is uncomfortable for you, it's going to show. I don't care how you try to hide, it's going to show.
Right.
Now, when we look at verse 25, he made for them a statute. That is, Yahuwah gave Yasharel statutes and ordinances to discipline them. At Mara, Yahuwah revealed to Yasharel the sections of the Torah concerning the Sabbath, the red heifer, and the administration of justice. And there Yahshua failed in their first trial, for they murmured against Moshe instead of approaching him to pray that the bitter water should be rendered drinkable. It is important that we understand that at Mara no laws were given, or this was an opinion to Yahshua. But Moshe taught them how to regulate their life and how to live in an orderly and civilized manner and how to conduct themselves when under trial, which is the same thing. You're still giving what? Instructions. You're still giving what? Law. Because Moshe is not teaching from his own experience, but he's teaching from that which he knows is approved and acceptable from the Abba. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So he's not preaching something or teaching something out of the ordinary. He is teaching this because it is to bring them all into one conformity, under one instruction or hub of instructions. Because remember, there was a group that left that was not what? That was not the children of Yahshua. So they're going to come out with a whole different mindset. You got people that if you're not careful that be trying to, egg you on and push you on to say and do things that truthfully you shouldn't do. Now, once again, here they began to complain. You just crossed the Reed Sea or the Sea of Reeds, and now you're complaining about water that's bitter. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. Now, the remarks that by the lesson of this episode, the Yashraelites prepared themselves for the acceptance of the statutes and judgments of Yahuwah, which Moshe was about to place before them. Very important for us to understand once again. The Abba, basically, he tries our hearts in situations. In situations that we look at, sometimes we think, okay, well, if we don't have any water, what are we going to do? You walked on dry ground. You're going to tell me that water is a hard thing for him to provide? No, it's not hard to provide. But when you're not focused on the miracles and we are just being like parrots and we're just mimicking what everybody else does, eventually it's going to come out.
Right.
Because when you get to those places, you start thinking, this is not a hard thing. I had to really, exercise my belief, but this is not a hard thing. And, it's bitter water. But I know, Abba Yahuwah, there's something you're able to do to change this water. So what do we need to do? Let's go to the one that he has instructed to lead us. What do we need to do? You don't go and complain. Are y'all following me?
Yes. Yes.
You don't go and complain.
Right.
This is one of the number one things that get our people in trouble. Complaining. All you got to do is look at some of these posts and some of these names. They say that's not complaining. That's just being real. That's complaining.
Right.
Because we don't believe. Are you following?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. 26, diligently hearken. This implies the acceptance of the commandments with a full understanding of all the obligations they entail. Once again, diligently hearken. That means consistently. That means you have committed yourself to hearkening, to hearing, and to doing everything that he has commissioned us to do. I'm not talking about traditions. Because by the time you finish with traditions, you woe out and can't really keep the commands of Abba Yahuwah. Because you didn't just woe yourself out with the traditions of men. Right. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So we have to understand and be able to distinguish between traditions and the will of the Abba. And will do. This implies the performance of the commandments. This implies the performance of the commandments. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Don't add, don't take away, just comply. And as we do so, we will find what? We will find the power, the hand and the power of Abba Yahuwah on our lives without restriction. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That which is right. A reference to the positive commandments. And listen once again. As the rabbis taught, if a man is honest in his business and gains the esteem of his fellows, Scripture ascribes it to him as though he had fulfilled the whole Torah. But that's not what the Torah says. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Because just because a person has ethical business practices does not mean they're adhering to the Torah. You have the brother Nipsey, what's the man's brother name? Nipsey Hussle.
Yes.
Now, he, from what I've seen, was a business person and he had great practices. But did he ascribe to the Torah? So if he didn't ascribe to the Torah, then how is the Torah fulfilled through him? Are you following me?
Yes.
These are things that are important. This is how things get so misconstrued and people get so confused because they believe that if my practices as a business person are straight, then I'm fulfilling Torah. No, you're not unless you're doing what he said do. Because just because your practices, and understand, I am not saying that we are supposed to be criminals, and neither am I saying that our practices in business are supposed to be raggedy.
Right.
But your business ethics and your ethics concerning the commandments are two different things. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. And will give ear. This alludes to the prohibition. It further implies the punctual performance of all commandments, statutes, commandments which take the form of royal decrees with no reason assigned for their performance. Because remember, he told us to adhere to his what? His commands, his statutes, and his judgments. Very important for us to understand. And when we comply to those, then we don't have to worry about having, watch this, I will put none of the diseases. They were not to rebel against Yahuwah's will like the Mitzrayim, whose revolt brought the plague upon them. If they were loyal, they would be spared physical afflictions. Why do our people suffer physical affliction? Because we don't want to listen. We don't want to keep the Torah. We don't want to abide by his instructions. We don't want to live a life that says we have a regimen that constructs our lives. We don't want to have people don't want that says on the day that everybody does everything, you are prohibited or forbidden to do any practices on that day. Don't nobody want to hardly want to be in on no Sabbath. Because this is the day or the yom that people make their most revenue. So for people to go a business, close my shop down on what? Oh, I don't think so. You got to understand that you should do that on the first day. That's a lie. So when you begin to tell our people, these are things we don't do. We don't sell. We don't buy.
Right.
We don't cook on the Sabbath. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
But yet, people do. And so when you start telling people, yeah, we have to adhere to this, people don't want to adhere to it. And this is why people are suffering physical afflictions. And if they're not physically suffering, then they're dying.
Yes.
Then they're dying. Very important for us to see. I am Yahuwah that healeth thee, without the aid of a physician, and will heal thee of such ills of which no physician can cure thee. I instruct thee in my commandments, which will prevent thee from falling victims to disease or dis-ease. They say dis-ease. Like a physician who warns against eating something which could cause an illness. So it's important that we truly, truly understand and get a handle on this lifestyle and not just talk it and not be about it. I was thinking earlier today as I was kind of looking over some things and thinking about the home front and just looking at it and how sometimes when we are in class and sometimes how people in class, and I look at it, you do what you do. But I find it very hard to take a lesson and convey it in an hour. That's just me. I'm sorry. And this is no negative against anybody else. If you teach in 30 minutes and can convey all that in 30 minutes, more power to you. But there is so much more. When you bake a cake, that cake has 45 minutes on it. If you bake it too long, you're going to dry it out. If you don't let it bake long enough, it's going to fall and be a mess. But when it comes to the things of the Abba, we are so ready to be just like the Christian arena, 15-minute sermons, 20-minute sermons. And we're so ready to cut it because we're like, okay, we don't want to be in here too long. But then we out doing everything else. Everything else. Instead of listening and applying what he's given unto us. For Moshe to teach the children of Yashua a song, they had to be focused and they had to remain there. They couldn't just get up and leave. Well, we got to pitch our tent. We got to do this. Oh, no, you're going to remain there and get instructions. Because you have to remember, after you get all the rest of this stuff out the way, then there has to be an impartation. First, there has to be a pulling out and a relinquishing and letting go. Then there has to be an imparting. And I find it very difficult to do these things in an hour, especially when you're trying to bring out important points and important information to help, say, hey, yo, we have to flesh this out. We have to look at this from every angle. Because if we don't, guess what can happen? We can be blindsided. We can be attacked from an area that we have not covered properly. And so it's important that we understand, what do we ahab more? Do we ahab listening to his instructions? Or do we ahab the fact that, hey, we know we are his people and that's all that we need to know? No, there is more to this walk than just knowing that I am set apart. Right. I have to know how to please him. Right. I have to, because if we don't know how to please him, then what are we doing? Why are we in it if we're not really trying to please him? Are y'all following me? Yes. We have to know how to please him. Because if we don't, once again, then what are we doing? Very important. Are y'all following me? Yes. Verse 27, 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, corresponding to the 12 tribes and 70 elders of Yasharal, respectively. This is interpreted on the ground that the wells and palm trees were not there by design, and the